Welcome to the Digital Marketing Insights podcast, brought to you by Brightside Digital.
Hi everyone, welcome to the show. I'm delighted to say we have Maud. Hi Maud. And Maud is an account director at Fabric Social. And Maud, over to you.
Hi Tom, how are you doing? Listen, thank you so much for having me on the podcast. I know we've been chatting for the past couple of months, so delighted that we could finally carve out some time to chat today.
And Maud, we always start off the same by saying, can you give us just a breakdown of your career to date and what you're up to at the moment?
Sure, no problem. Yeah, so I suppose just to kind of, go back to the start, tell you a little bit about me. So I grew up in Dublin, born and raised, went to school and university here. I'm the eldest of four and come from a kind of a business family. My dad is a solicitor, had his own law practice, and then moved into to property development. So I suppose me being the eldest in the family from a very young age, I knew I wanted to be involved in business. I would frequently attend his office breaking things when I was a kid. But I always knew I wanted to be in business. And as I kind of, got older and went to college, it became clear that I really, had a grow for marketing and sales a little bit as well. But I did business in DIT and knew very early on, I think within the first 6 months, that I wanted to specialize in marketing. So I immersed myself in societies in DIT. I was involved in the DIT fashion show and Vodafone sponsored them at the time. So that was actually an amazing experience at a very young age. Yeah, so I suppose when I was 19, 20, I was introduced to, the marketing team in Vodafone through the DIT fashion show. Had a brilliant PR mentor. So my role at the time was PRO, which I took very seriously. But really, I suppose that was the beginning of it for me. And I went on then in the latter years of college to do a couple of internships, one of which I went to New York and worked with Kelly Cutrone, who some of your listeners might know from The Hills. So I worked in her fashion PR agency in New York, which was an interesting experience to say the least, when you're working all hours and you're not getting paid for it. But it was, again, an amazing kind of introduction to the world of PR, to the world of communications and marketing. And I was all set to go back to New York when I finished college. But I actually got a job in the IRFU. So growing up, I was, very into sports and had played kind of Gaelic football at a high level and swam as well. So for me, sports marketing was a kind of a dream job. So I went into the IRFU, worked in the marketing team there for 2 years. And it really was, I suppose, a baptism of fire, in the sense that I got to work with, again, Vodafone, who are now still the Ireland team sponsors, but worked with some amazing companies and marketing leaders who have, I've kept in touch with all throughout my career to date, and really opened my eyes into the sponsorship arena as well, and to the commercial side of marketing. And got to know a lot of people in the industry, got to know a lot of kind of agency people, as well as, working with those big brands. Also had a lot of fun along the way, going to all the rugby games, which certainly helped. So I will say that I guess my career hasn't been linear or a straight line like a lot of people. You kind of dip in and out of different industries. I have always done marketing and communications roles, and in every role or every industry that I've moved into, that has always been a kind of a conscious decision to keep the marketing and the communications. So I decided to pivot into property development for a couple of years. As I mentioned, my family are involved in property, so I'd always had a natural interest in the area and wanted to kind of learn a little bit more about it. So I worked for two developers kind of early on in my career, one of which is Cairn Homes, who is now the leading Irish house builder. And when I joined them, they had just IPO'd. And it was a really interesting time for me to join the business because I was working with the sales teams, the finance departments, the planning teams, and it was like working in a very large startup with a huge amount of capital. And I think from a business perspective, that was really invaluable because sometimes in marketing roles, we can be a little bit siloed and kind of, not see other aspects of a company. And working in Cairn, it gave me, the opportunity to work in that kind of multidisciplinary environment, albeit working on the marketing team. So yeah, kind of a mixed bag there, kind of in the first couple of years, and then probably kind of mid-20s decided my now husband decided to take a bit of time out and go to South America, like a lot of people do. And to be honest, it was probably the best decision that I ever made. I think we took about 4 months out and came back totally refreshed and totally ready to kind of jump back into work. And I would definitely recommend anybody in their early to mid or late 20s or 30s thinking about doing it to just do it, because those life experiences are really invaluable and can actually help shape your professional career as well. So when I came back, I was kind of took my time in terms of figuring out what I wanted to do next. And for me, I had become sort of a generalist in marketing and I wanted to be a little bit more specialized. I had a couple of in-house roles. So I joined Wilson Hartnell, Ireland's leading communications agency, and I joined in 2019. I was there for about 3 years. And I got to work with some amazing clients. I had AIB as a client, Diageo, Fáilte Ireland, and they do say that WH is kind of like the University of PR in Ireland, and it's really true. You learn so much. It really shapes you as a professional, and I think working in a big agency environment like that, it's very fast paced. It's there's a very high standard expected of everybody, but you come out and I certainly came out a lot more professional, shall we say, and also had just learned so much. I then moved to Legacy Communications, an agency started by Bernard Brogan, kind of back into sports marketing a little bit there as an account director, and again had an amazing experience there. And I'm now in Fabric Social, where I am leading the Ireland client services team. Fabric was started in 2019 by Niall McGarry, and so we're a very young agency. We have some very high profile clients, including Britvic. So we work with Club Orange, Energize, Pinergy is another client, and then we have a UK arm as well, where we work with the likes of Greggs, Tote, and Pepsi, to name a few. So that's kind of me and my background in a nutshell.
So much experience, Ward. So it's going to be a great episode to try and get as much information out of you as possible. But I suppose, what is your comfort zone in marketing then? Like, obviously PR is where your natural skill set is, but can you break that down a bit more? What would you say is your main strength, your main skill sets?
Sure, yeah. So certainly PR and communications is something that I've done since the very beginning, and I think it's the area that probably comes the most natural to me. As I've grown and evolved, strategy and planning and kind of brand building has become really my focus and area of expertise. So now that I'm working in Fabric, where we specialize in social, it's really blending the brand strategy with the social media strategy and adapting to new platforms like TikTok and obviously the ever evolving landscape of Meta and LinkedIn as well is really important platform. But yeah, I think I am a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none, but certainly PR and how to kind of create the thread between social to PR, kind of general PR, and content as well, and really unearthing that storytelling piece for brands and how they want to be perceived, and then inspiring or working with the creative teams to come up with great campaigns and strategies.
Yeah, and obviously, can you give me a really good example of a campaign or some work that you're really proud of to help me vision your work?
Yeah, absolutely. So one that always brings to mind, which is one that I was the lead account manager for in Wilson Hartnell, was work that we did with Fáilte Ireland on the Keep Discovering campaign. So this was, and it still is, it's still out there now as a campaign, and it was Fáilte Ireland's largest marketing campaign, I think, since the Wild Atlantic Way or possibly ever. So we had a really, really strong interagency team at the time. We were working with Rothco, who were the lead creative agency, and Mediacom as well on the media side of things. And it was a really long process in terms of the creative process and how all the teams work together, and a lot of research and insights and time went into that, which I found absolutely fascinating. And Fáilte Ireland themselves have a dedicated insights team, and so they always produce some really amazing campaigns. They were the ones that came up with the Wild Atlantic Way and many others. So to work as part of that team was really exciting. And then I think from the PR element of things, we worked with a huge amount of influencers on that campaign. So the likes of Roz Purcell and Greg O'Shea, to name a few. I think we had the largest influencer campaign ever that year. So we, our job really was to create fame for domestic tourism in Ireland at a really tricky time. So when we initially started working on the campaign, it was pre-COVID. And the biggest thing about the work that we did was we had to pivot really quickly, put everything on pause, and create a whole new campaign for Keep Discovering in a COVID environment. So that was really interesting. It was at a time when people couldn't fly, which feels like a long time ago now, but it was only about two years ago. So just, I suppose, the learnings of how to overcome a crisis management, the creative process there was extremely interesting. So yeah, for me, it's always the one that stands out. I think it went on to win a load of awards afterwards from a PR perspective. We worked with all the kind of the top publications in the country to create fantastic content. So yeah, I think that's definitely the standout one.
Yeah, that's a huge campaign in itself. If you were meeting a business owner, maybe small to medium, let's say you were meeting them tomorrow, and they said to you, I want to get more coverage, I want to get more PR. Is there any kind of tips or hints or any small wins that you could give kind of a smaller business?
Where you're putting me on the spot here now, Tom. But yeah, no, I think the first thing is you really need to understand your audience, who you're targeting and why you're targeting them. Then obviously understanding your competitors, and what your USP is, what your story is, who in the business you can profile, be it on social, be it not on social. And I think also finding your tone of voice is really, really crucial to any campaign that any business is doing. So understanding who you are and want to be. And I think a lot of that, if a lot of that work is done early on in a company's journey, it will make it a lot easier. So I would always encourage clients to start off with that. Who do they want to be? How do they want to be perceived in the market? And then I think the rest of it flows, into your tactical campaign ideas, be it working with influencers, for example, or running paid content on social, or creating an event plan, or obviously in marketing there's a million and one different things you can do, but I think at the core you really need to understand your brand, tone of voice, your target audience, and the competitor landscape.
Love it. And is there anywhere where you go, Maud, for new insights and areas where you might upskill or learn new things?
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, I think in Ireland, it's really important to always be looking globally, and to always be looking at best in class examples in larger markets, because really we are a very small island here. We do have a lot of multinationals, and it's great that they are here, and we do have a kind of a global feel, even though we're a small country. But I do think it's really important to always look to Europe, look to places like New Zealand, South Africa, particularly in the area of tourism. They're doing incredible things. Then I think as well, seeing and really reviewing kind of awards or campaigns that have won awards, and really kind of understanding why, looking at latest consumer behavior trends, and always trying to be curious and to read and to learn, and really to as well look to other industries and markets. So I spend half an hour every morning reading the papers and looking at what's happening in economics in the world, and in politics. And I think all of that is really important when it comes to marketing and communications, because ultimately the wider macroeconomic environment has a huge impact on everything that you're doing.
Really well said. And the digital industry as a whole, is there anything that you think is really exciting, or anything that you see that's you're focusing on, or wider, I suppose?
Yeah, there is. So there's a couple of things. One is the emergence of AI, which obviously is having an impact on every industry and business, going to be impacting businesses, I think, in a more realistic sense from this year onwards. How it is impacting marketing. Firstly, the ASAI have just recently announced that they're going to be using AI tools to actually track influencer content on social, which is really interesting, and a very very interesting kind of step into that kind of world of monitoring and tracking. And I think it's going to have a bigger impact than we probably realize. So I think it's ever evolving, and I'm really curious and interested to see where it goes. Another area is kind of more specifically to social, is this idea of de-influencing. So for the past kind of 5-7 years, we've been accustomed to people selling us products across social. That is now turning on its head. I think the reason is because of the cost of living, and inflation skyrocketing. People are really trying to get the best bargains. They're also trying to kind of cut through the noise, and I think consumers are very sophisticated in terms of understanding when an influencer or somebody trying to, or any advertiser is trying to oversell them a product. So I think that's going to be a really interesting that's going to be really interesting to see emerge in the coming months.
Really well answered. Yeah, excellent answer, Maud. And lastly, Maud, I've got a question for you, which I always end the show on, which is, if you could bottle up one personality trait you have yourself that you could pass on to others, what would it be?
That's a great question. I think resilience is a really, really important attribute for anybody to have, But I think business can be really tough, and particularly, as a woman, it was International Women's Day yesterday. So as you kind of grow and get to more senior levels, you do start to realize the challenges that are there for women. And I think being resilient, everybody is going to have knocks, everybody's going to have bad days. And I would like to think that, it is a trait that I do have, that nothing a good night's sleep can't kind of cure. And I really encourage people on my team to be resilient, and don't get too bogged down when you do get a knock. Business, as I said, it's a tough environment no matter what industry you're in, and you have to be able to bounce back and have the strength and courage to come back, and that's how you really move forward and progress, I think.
That's really well said as well, Maud. That's it. But listen, if anyone wants to reach out to you or see more of your work, how can they find you?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can look me up on social media, or the Fabric Social website, which is www.fabricsocial.co. Because we're Ireland and UK, we have that address. So yeah, happy to chat to anybody.
Yeah, I must admit, checking out your work, some of the work you guys have been doing is fantastic. So definitely check you out. That's it. Thanks so much for being on the show, Maud, and thanks everyone for listening, watching, everything.
Thank you so much, Tom. Pleasure.